Hey guys, bring the boa here, and it is part 3 of the Q&A series, so I'm actually kind of excited that we even made it this far. But you may notice the handwriting is going to be different on these notes. It's because my girlfriend actually wrote these. She really wanted to write the sticky notes up here, so she did for this video. But without further ado, we'll get into these questions, because some of these are kind of like repeats, but not all of them. And then I decided I am going to make the Instagram one its own thing. So, don't know if I'm going to make it its own series or what, probably not, but anyway. First question is, do reptiles shed their scales? So, actually, from my experience, no. They don't shed their scales. They shed the layer of skin covering their scales. So, a little bit of a difference there. The scales are actually part of their skin layer, if that makes sense. So when they shed off a layer off the top of it. They do not shed the actual scale. I'm assuming that that's what this meant. So no, they don't shed their scales, to the best of my knowledge. Let's see. If snakes shed, do ticks fall off? Now, I actually thought this was a really good question, and I looked into it a little bit. And actually, it kind of depends on how big the animal is. So, like, if it's an anaconda, and it's like a big one, I would assume the ticks would probably fall off, just because of how thick the skin layer would be. It could potentially knock off a lot of the smaller ticks, but if there's any bigger ones, no, I think that they would stay on there. But something the size of like your average ball python or like a hognose snake, the ticks would most likely stay stuck in them or burrowed in, unless it was a very small tick. Because here in America there are a few different species of ticks. So, and some of them get, I've seen a couple of ticks fully gorged up full of blood have gotten about like, that big. So ticks like that, there's no way that they'd get pulled off easily. But some of the smaller ones, maybe. I mean, it was hard enough pulling one out of me when I was in Florida. Mom and I both got tagged by ticks, and mine was just a tiny little baby one the size of my pinky nail, and that thing took a lot of effort to pull out. So honestly, in my opinion, it depends on the species of tick and the species of snake it is stuck onto. Now let's see here. How do herps react to mosquito bites? Now, those of you that don't know what herps mean, no, it's not short for herpes. I've been asked that a lot. That'd be a fun question. That'll be a question then, I guess, at some point. But how do reptiles react to mosquito bites? I'd assume they react very similar to how most animals react, where the mosquito saliva prevents a blood clot, so the blood flows easily, but then there's probably going to be a bump afterwards. It kind of depends, because it even depends on people how we react to their saliva. So I also believe it is based on the individual basis for reptiles as well. I'm assuming that there are probably a few species out there that actually have an immunity to the anticoagulant that is in the spit of a mosquito, which an anticoagulant just means that the blood cannot coagulate, which coagulation is basically your ability to form a blood clot as well as to make a scab. Any more skin questions? Okay. We're gonna keep some of these questions for later. I'm gonna have like all the decent like factual based questions up front, and then some of the more like humorous questions at the end. But do all lizards eat bugs? And this one's pretty simple. No. Crested geckos will eat fruit and insects. Most people prefer to use human manufactured diets called Pangea food. because it is a pretty good nutrient mix of different fruits and vegetables, as well as calcium and vitamin supplements. But iguanas also will eat vegetables and fruits. Chameleons, some species of chameleons do eat leaves of things. My veiled chameleon, when I had him, he used to love eating orchids. So we'd buy like the cheap little orchids, wash them to make sure there's no pesticides, and we'd let him eat it. So he really liked orchid petals and rose petals. So no. Do all lizards eat bugs? No. There's quite a few species that I know of anyway that either can eat insects and vegetation, or can only eat vegetation. So, like, bearded dragons can eat both. I'm trying to think. Marine iguanas. Marine iguanas only eat algae. I'm trying to remember what other species. There are other species of things that only eat. Tortoises. Well, most of the time. I've seen videos of tortoises eating snakes. But, which I know, that's kind of like metal for a tortoise, but... and plus they move slow, so like how that happened, snake probably got hit by a car, or a bird got it and killed the bird, killed the snake, but the snake probably bit the bird, so this bird dropped it, something like that, and then the tortoise came along and was like, ooh, neat. But the answer is no. And I know that this asked about lizards, and I mentioned a tortoise, but that's just to show that like not all reptiles are insectivores, and there are also carnivorous lizards like the Komodo dragon. I've seen videos of them eating monkeys. So they are much too big. Can I even grammar today? They are too large to fully rely on insects for their diet. They would not get enough calorie intake to keep themselves alive. So there are a lot of those larger species either will eat just plants, and they'll eat a lot of plant tissue, or they will eat a strict carnivorous diet, like Komodo dragons. Tegus are omnivores, they're a larger species. A lot of monitors are only carnivorous, so they have to eat meat like rodents, rabbits. I think some of them can eat snakes too. And then there's of course like, I almost mentioned some snakes, and it's obvious that they don't eat plants, so never mind on that point. But no, there are some a lot of them like to just eat insects, but then there are some that only like to eat meat, and some that only like to eat vegetables, and there's some that are in the middle, like bearded dragons can eat all three, just in certain ratios. So that's the answer to that question. It was probably the longest to reply so far. Any warm-blooded reptiles? Yeah, actually the Komodo dragon is one of them. I believe that there are some larger, like anacondas, once they hit that indeterminate growth stage and get huge, they might. But do not quote me on it. Because I'm trying to remember, I thought I saw an article about it like a year ago. But since I cannot remember the name, nor when I saw the article, I would not deem it as credible information. So, I do know for a fact though that Komodo dragons are one of the few warm-blooded reptiles, just because of their metabolism. Let's see, so... what spectrum of light do reptiles see? Now, my reply to this question is, I don't think we really know the full extent, but they can see in the ultraviolet spectrum from a couple things I've read. People do believe that they can see from the ultraviolet spectrum, but there's a common myth that they cannot see like red light. That's a lie. I have a lot of first-hand experience on that. Or I shouldn't say it's a lie, it's misinformation. Because we'll commonly see, like, hold on, let me grab it. I have a red heat lamp actually on one of my ball pythons right now because my cage temperature dropped last night. Okay, well, you see that hue of red over there? I can't bring the lamp But like, you know, those heat lamps, I can probably pull another one, just unplug it. But the, yeah, there's one right here. Let's see. These heat lamps with like the red bulbs in here. Bear with me, I hope that didn't make any awful sounds. But like these red bulbs that make red light that are used for heat, they actually, the snakes can actually see that, reptiles can actually see it. I know my leopard geckos react to it when I turn it on, my snakes, all of them react to them when I turn them on. I don't think I've had a single reptile thus far that has not reacted to those red lamps. And then there's a common myth as well that they do not see those blue, purple, nocturnal lamps of the UV. Well, considering that like a minute or two ago I just said that they are believed to perceive the UV spectrum, UV light produces ultraviolet light, which is obviously part of the ultraviolet spectrum. So, yes, they can also see that as well. So that was just kind of to address the myth that reptiles don't see their nighttime lamps, because they do. They obviously do. My ball python Cheerio, who I just borrowed the lamp from over there, reacted when I took it from his thing. He kind of flinched because he was like, whoa, where's my light going? Hercules, it's not on because she has a huge heat pad, so she doesn't really need it. But yeah, so what spectrum? Obviously the same visual spectrum that we can see, but then I'd say a little bit past and below, in terms of like below being into the infrared part of the spectrum and then above in the UV spectrum. Let's see here. Oh, this one's just a fact. That Steve Irwin is amazing. That's not a question. Let's see. Okay, this is gonna be like the last like factual thing. This one right here, Steve Irwin. Steve Irwin is amazing. Well, yeah, he is. So, yeah. That one, done. But, what is the longest venomous snake? To the best of my knowledge, I think it's one of the mambas. For some reason, I feel like it's the black mamba, but it could also be the king cobra. But I'm trying to remember which species of king cobra it is. I mean, king cobra, that is the species. But it's either one of the mambas or the king cobra for the longest venomous snake. Well, in terms of like legitimately venomous, like I'm not counting like mildly, I'm talking like could probably do a lot of damage venomous. I'm throwing my vote in with the king cobra, because I've seen a few of there's one guy on Instagram, Chris Sweet. He has a couple king cobras. Those things are freaking massive, and most of the green mambas I've seen do not even rival his size. His one snake oracle, I've not seen any snake rival that thing's size. So, in terms of venomous snakes. But obviously in the part 4, because I do have enough questions to make a part 4, I will correct if I have the wrong snake. But I'm not like 90% sure it is the king cobra. Now, for some of the interesting questions, demographic-based questions, but this time, well, one of the questions has to do with reproduction, so we'll cover that one. Even though I'm pretty sure I've covered this one before, which I'm probably going to end up having to cover it again, because there's an Instagram one too. But, can lizards be gay? Yeah, they can be. I have some bisexual leopard geckos. That's going to sound really dumb, and no, I'm not using my pets to force some agenda or something like that. I have some male leopard geckos that like to mate with other male leopard geckos, and I know they're male because both individuals have reproduced for me in the past. Then I've also had female leopard geckos that like to do the mating ritual where they mount the female and they act like they're mating, but they're not because it's two females. So that's about it for that. So for this one, it's going to be how do reptiles react to drugs? This is very akin to the last question, or the question I had, I believe it was last episode of this, where how do they react to alcohol? I assume it'd be very similar to how we do. I do believe there was a test with how spiders react and how it affects their silk strength, the size of the web, and the web pattern. For this, I believe that it'd change the behavior the same or a similar way it does to us, because it affects your neurochemistry pretty similarly. I'd assume, even though the structure of their brain is a bit different than ours, I'd assume that it has a similar effect, and it would probably be negative in most cases. Stimulants, obviously, would stimulate the brain, make it work faster. Narcotics would slow it down. Common stimulants are like, let's see, what stimulants can I think of off the bat? Cocaine. Cocaine is a stimulant. I think methamphetamine. Some of the amphetamines might be. I don't know. But then narcotics like Xanax, heroin would probably also slow it down. Then there's stuff like marijuana, which I think would be considered a narcotic. I think. And because it slows the brain down and it slows down a lot of the bodily processes. So I think the marijuana would also slow them down. But I've not seen a lot of like video accounts like of something like that happening, which I'm kind of glad, because imagining an alligator on crack or meth would be terrifying. But so let's see, for the last question, which I kind of already covered this. What's that supposed to be? Well, I think she started writing conspiracy and I was like, no, let's get that out of here. Are all celebrities reptiles? I talked about Obama last time. I don't know why I was asked this so many times. Maybe it's just for the meme. Maybe it's because people genuinely believe that celebrities are reptiles. Like I said, Zuckerberg, there's been enough proof that he might be a robot. He might be a reptile. I don't know. All I know is I hope he's doing his job well, and if so, it doesn't really matter. But, there's been no conclusive evidence to rule that anyone is a reptile, but there's also been not enough evidence to disprove it. So, for that weird little game theory, that's up for you guys to decide. And I'll see you guys next time, and hopefully in a part 4 and 5 to this, as well as I'm going to have some more videos coming out. These are almost all these, except for the New Year's one, are going to air after New Year's, which today is when I'm filming this one. So, yeah. Hope you guys have a great day, and if you didn't see my New Year's one, have a Happy New Year.